After having the first sexual encounter with the woman he loves, she disappears, leaving behind a letter stating that they're not a good match. The first time and the first rejection. If you've ever been dumped and felt bad for days, if not weeks, not wanting to do anything, just thinking about that person, feeling anger, sadness, loneliness, this video is for you, because you will see how Rudeus Greyhar, aka Rudy, the main character of Mushoku Tensei, faces depression in a world where there are no professionals to help him. And with each episode, you will see how he overcomes this trauma. And at the end of this video, in episode 4, there's a valuable lesson that helped me a lot and can help you too. So stay tuned until the end of the video to learn what that lesson is. Here at Anime Survivor, we make different decisions from the main character to get a better outcome in the situation that arise in the plot. So if you would do something different from what was said in the video, feel free to leave your opinion in the comments, and we will discuss. Right at the beginning of the second season, we see Rudeus in a carriage heading to find his missing mother. But just the fact that he left his cabin after lying down for days is already a significant improvement in his state of depression. Remember that in this story, Rudy has memories of his past life, where he spent 20 years locked in his room, without physical contact with people. For him, being secluded in a safe environment was habitual, and it would have been very easy, so finding a new purpose and changing his surroundings was the right decision to make. But even when surrounded by people, he can't communicate. It's noticeable that the way he closes himself off when talking to these people, Rudy is dealing with severe social anxiety. Luckily for him, and you'll see why later in the video, Suzanne, a warrior from an adventurers group called Counter Arrow, is attentive to him, trying to start a conversation, giving off a warm and maternal feeling. On the other hand, Sarah is rude, quite acidic, denying any connection with Rudy. Remember this well, as it will be very important later on. Upon arriving at the dukedom of Basharant, he rents a room in an inn and isolates himself, lying in bed, looking at a strand of Eris's hair, his beloved who left him. His mind does everything to keep him in the room, and the hair doesn't help, but he gathers courage, even though he has no energy at all to leave and go to the Adventurers Guild. The strategy he's devised is quite clever, since he has no information about his mother's whereabouts, and since it takes time for any information from his father, who's also searching. To reach this city, he will undertake guild missions to gain reputation, to be mentioned in all the northern countries, in the hopes of receiving information from someone who knows where his mother is. As he searches for a mission, he feels quite uncomfortable being observed by various people in the guild, and even struggles to communicate with the receptionist. When desperation starts to set in, Suzanne arrives, warm and friendly as always. She had been watching Rudy from a distance and noticed that he was looking for a mission, to prevent him from undertaking a risky mission alone. Little did she know that Rudy could handle any guild mission on his own, and with ease. She invites him to join a mission with her group. Rudy is hesitant and unsure about accepting, but Suzanne insists calmly and with good arguments, and he ends up agreeing. So, Rudy meets the other members of the group, who are quite welcoming, except for Sarah, who doesn't want him in the group. The next day, Rudy meets up with the group, and they head into the forest to hunt for shining brown bears. Along the way, he observes Suzanne training Sarah, which reminds him of Iris, given Sarah's similar temperament. They set up a camp and discuss their battle formation. Rudy takes on a support role with Timothy, a mage and the group's leader. Sarah, an archer, and Mimir, a healer, are also part of the group, while Petrie and Suzanne form the front line. Sarah starts talking a bunch of nonsense about Rudy, unaware that he fights better than the two frontliners and could outperform any mage in the group magically. In fact, Rudy could easily take down this entire group with his hands tied. I must admit that at this point, I got a little irritated with Rudy's reaction. What a bothersome girl. I would have released a bit of magical power just to shut her up and make her realize who she's talking to. However, he remains silent due to his insecurity and melancholy. They set out on the mission, encounter a group of bears, and Timothy starts chanting, releasing an area explosion. This only annoys the bears, who head towards them. While the mage is reciting a spell, what a newbie, Rudy creates a massive mud puddle to limit the bear's movement. I'm telling you, Rudy would wipe out this group with ease. While the mage keeps reciting and casting spells on the bears in the mud, Rudy, with his tracking ability, realizes that an even larger group is coming their way, surrounding them. Without Rudy, the group probably wouldn't survive this situation. Pay attention to this moment, as this situation could also happen in your life. Of course, not with a bunch of giant brown bears heading your way, and not in life-threatening situations. As the group retreats, Rudy prepares to eliminate the bears, which would be easy under standard temperature and pressure conditions. But he freezes, his depression preventing him from taking action, and he ends up accepting his death, standing there waiting to be torn apart by the bears. However, Suzanne arrives just in time and blocks a bear's attack, telling him to escape, while the rest of the group provides support. Nonetheless, Rudy remains frozen, standing in the same spot without taking any action. Has this ever happened to you? I don't mean accepting death, but being so scared that you can't act? In Rudy's case, he only snapped out of this moment when he realized that the people who were being kind to him were putting in effort and getting hurt, which motivated him to face his anxiety. He prepares himself, conjuring a fire Genki Damel with immense energy, creating almost a nuclear explosion that wipes out all the bears at once. See? It was quite easy for him. The only difficulty in this entire situation was in his mind. Did you identify with a situation you've been through? When I thought about it, many situations came to mind, and how much easier it would be for me now after working on my emotional intelligence. Often, the difficulty is only in our minds. If we take the time to discover the reason behind your fear, you can make better decisions and things become much easier than you imagine. After defeating the monsters, they gather the pelts to complete the mission, and Rudy is feeling a bit better for overcoming the first challenge of his depression. Sarah, uncomfortable due to her ego and temperament, thanks Rudy in a way that doesn't even sound like gratitude. What an annoying girl. Anyway, they return to the guild, turn in the pelts, and Suzanne, being the motherly figure she is, gives credit to Rudy, announcing that she'll buy a round of drinks for the entire guild. Everyone goes wild, cheering his name. Gradually, Rudy starts to loosen up and regain some confidence. Back in his room and alone, he realizes how dangerous the thought he had, "I have nothing to lose," and how he was trapped in a spiral of negativity. He recalls his mentor, his family, his friends, and decides to get rid of Eris's hair, taking a significant step towards overcoming rejection and depression. The action he took to improve was liking this video. If he did it, why don't you do it too? Just a suggestion. The next day, Rudeus feels lighter, more excited to work with his new companions. He's becoming more known in the city, and he can't wait to take on another mission. Arriving at the guild, he comes across a conceited guy boasting about taking a mission to kill some lizards. This guy will be quite important for Rudy's development. Keep watching, and you'll find out why. Our protagonist accepts a simple mission in the city, clearing snow. He notices a girl who has fallen and uses healing magic to tend to her injury. Upon returning to the inn, Sarah is waiting, annoying as always, informing him that Counter Arrow is going on a mission to a ruin and inviting him to join. Rudy agrees, and they head to the mission. During the reconnaissance in the ruins, giant lizards appear, and Timothy orders the group to retreat. However, the lizards are incredibly fast and catch up to them. Rudy then decides to delay the monsters by creating a stone barrier, which doesn't have much effect. He creates ice projectiles, aiming at a rock above the lizards, causing it to fall but not dealing significant damage. Realizing that the group had already retreated, he feels more at ease. But just as he was about to face the lizards alone, the group returns to help him, and even Sarah becomes more receptive to Rudeus, telling him to provide support. However, in the midst of the battle, that conceited guy shows up with another group and eliminates all the lizards. His name is Saul, and this idiot punches Timothy, claiming that Counter Arrow was stealing the mission he had taken. Remember that moment? As it turns out, it was all a misunderstanding. The mission Saul accepted was in a different location, and due to passages connecting to the ruin, he ended up coming out there. Upon realizing that it was all a misunderstanding, he apologizes but insists that Counter Arrow can only take the lizard scales. Back at the guild, Counter Arrow and Rudy are celebrating, and Saul shows up drunk, causing an uncomfortable atmosphere for everyone. He directs all his insults at Rudy, who doesn't react to any provocation, accepting everything with his head down. I don't know about you, but with the power Rudy has, I would have given this guy a beating in a way that he'd remember. He would pass out by the trauma. Respect is good and preserves teeth. However, it's clear that Rudy still needs to work on his shaken self-image and confidence. After doing nothing, Saul feels disgusted by Rudy and leaves, saying he's a coward. Some time passes, and Rudeus is alone in the guild when Saul appears again, provoking him, but Rudy doesn't react, leaving Saul even more disgusted and irritated, causing him to leave. Soon after, Counter Arrow enters the room, but two members are missing, Mimir and Sarah. Rudy asks what happened, and Suzanne explains that they got lost during a snowstorm and were attacked by snow buffaloes. The three had no choice but to retreat. They plan to search for them as soon as the snowstorm subsides, but that's not a problem for Rudy. Of course, he prepares himself and leaves the city, casting a spell that instantly dispels the snowstorm. If it weren't for his lack of confidence and self-image, few people could match him. In the forest, he spots some buffaloes and creates what's like a stake grenade, finishing these creatures off with headshots. More buffaloes appear, but they pose no difficulty for him. Rudeus stumbles upon a pile of bones, remnants of buffalo prey, and in the midst of this pile, he finds Mimir's remains. Upon searching the pile, he discovers a broken arrow and the earring Sarah wore. However, he's suddenly attacked by something and notices Sarah pinned unconscious against a strange tree. Desperate, he rushes toward the tree, dodging and blocking attacks. He reaches Sarah and rescues her, falling into a river in the process. Sarah wakes up, and they retreat to a cave to dry off. He uses healing magic on her, they dry themselves, and prepare to leave the cave. Sarah finally stops being in insufferable pain and opens up completely to Rudy. You know what I mean? Sarah reunites with the rest of the group, and everyone is grateful that Rudy saved her, and Rudy grows increasingly confident. However, not everything is smooth sailing, my friend. You'll soon find out why. Some time passes, and Rudy is building bonds with Counter Arrow, and Sarah is growing closer to Rudy. They even have a date around the city. At night, while they're drinking, Sarah gets a bit tipsy and offers to go to his room to watch anime survivor videos. That's not it. But since they're subscribed to the channel and have the notification bell turned on, I know they'll watch later. Arriving in the room, they get straight to the point without any fuss. However, Rudy's little buddy doesn't cooperate, which sends Rudy into a panic and leaves Sarah rather irritated, prompting her to leave the room. Furious, Rudeus does what many people do, and I confess I've done it plenty: drown his sorrows in alcohol. I won't play the parent and tell you not to do it because I've done it a lot, and I imagine you have too. Amidst this drunkenness, Saul shows up and starts taunting Rudy. But this time, he doesn't let it slide. Rudy punches Saul and starts taking out all his frustration on him. It becomes evident that Saul isn't a complete idiot, just a guy with an inflated ego. Upon realizing Rudy's desperate situation, Saul sits down and listens to the entire story about Rudy's struggle with rejection and his lack of baseball bat hardness. Then, Saul comes up with a solution and takes our protagonist to a specialized establishment. You know what I mean? Upon arriving there, Rudy has a consultation with a professional in the field, but his tool doesn't work again, leaving him even more frustrated. According to the professional, Rudeus couldn't have a relationship because he's afraid of women, and the solution would be to find someone he trusts to have a relationship with and who wouldn't abandon him. That's right, his first sexual experience and the rejection are the reasons he can't connect with other women. Frustrated and with his ego wounded, he once again turns to alcohol, drinking until dawn. Drunk and angry at himself, he starts talking loudly with Saul, saying some things about Sarah. He mentions that she's childish, and I agree, but also say that he prefers more mature women, and more other things. What he didn't know was that Sarah was behind him, hearing everything, and the mess was so significant that even Suzanne disapproved of his actions. Yeah, my friend, I also learned the hard way that I shouldn't drown my sorrows in alcohol when feeling really low. But things get more serious from this point on. Losing the trust of the group that supported him in his most difficult moment and intoxicated with alcohol, Rudy attempts to take his own life. He almost succeeds if it weren't for Saul being there. Saul tries to encourage him to go after Sarah and apologize, but with his ego shattered, lacking confidence, hurt by all the experiences of this life and the previous one, he doesn't have the strength to react. In an attempt to help Rudy, Saul invites him to join his group and travel the world in search of missions. Without knowing where to go and needing friendship to address new traumas, Rudy accepts the invitation, marking a new phase in his journey. Time passes, and we see Rudy on a mission with his new group. Just when everything seems calm, a red dragon crashes the party. Due to the snow curtain, visibility is extremely low, making teamwork difficult. The dragon initiates its offensive, easily defeating some of the team members. Saul orders the group to retreat, but our overpowered protagonist takes the lead, releasing a smoke bomb. The members manage to escape, but the dragon advances on Rudy, who deftly maneuvers over the monster. The dragon launches fireballs, but Rudy defends himself with water magic. With a "you're screwed" expression, Rudy conjures massive stone projectiles, turning the dragon into Swiss cheese. But Rudy isn't done yet. Without giving any respite and to ensure the dragon's demise, he conjures mud to limit its mobility and crushes the dragon's head with a massive stone. I'm telling you, Rudy is not your average guy. The beatdown was so intense that I felt sorry for the dragon in the end. The group can't believe their eyes and celebrates Rudy's solo victory. They return to the city, and over time, we see that Rudy became even more famous after the showdown. They even composed songs about him. While having lunch in a tavern, Alina arrives to meet him. If you're not familiar with Alina, she's a nymphomaniac elf who used to be part of Paul's group, Rudy's father. She also traveled with his mentor, Roxy. If you want to know more about what happens in the first season of Mushoku, write in the comments, where's the first season? If there are enough comments, I'll make it. Alina introduces herself to Rudeus and begins to seduce our protagonist. Little does she know, he has a mechanical issue that won't lead to anything in the end. After some teasing, Alina reveals she was looking for him and shares some crucial news. They've located the whereabouts of Zenith, Rudy's mother. She's in a labyrinth near a city in the center of another continent, and it would take Rudy a year or more to get there from his current location. Additionally, it's winter, which makes the journey even more challenging. So, our overpowered character decides to train a bit longer, as Paul, his father, and Roxy, his mentor, are likely already heading to the labyrinth. However, things aren't all sunshine and rainbows for Rudy. He ends up sharing a house with Alina, who spends the entire day and night bringing men over, and he can only listen to the noises coming from the room next door. Alina spares no one. Even Saul fell victim to her charms. 2 years go by, and while Rudeus continues training, a letter arrives for him. It's an invitation to join the Ranoa Magic University, the same university his mentor attended. His accomplishments as an adventurer have reached them, and since he's Roxy's disciple, the headmaster wants to offer him a privileged position to enroll as a special student. Rudeus is a bit reluctant to accept the invitation, as his priority is reuniting with his family. But at one point, he wakes up in the white world, where the human god meets him once again. After teasing Rudy, the human god tells him to like this video, which Rudy does without a second thought. The god also tells him that he needs to go to the academy to perfect his magic, but Rudy hesitates. Then the god pulls out his strongest card. He mentions that it's at the academy that our problematically unimpressive protagonist will find a cure for his lack of stiffness. Now, That's hitting below the belt. Armed with this new information and his male ego activated, Rudy changes his priorities and decides to enroll in the academy. He bids farewell to Saul, who helped him a lot and is alive today because of him. Rudy expresses his gratitude for all the help and sets out to enroll, find a solution to his problem, and study about the mass teleportation that caused the separation of everyone in his town. But there's something important I need to mention now that you've seen Rudy's emotional evolution. I'm sure, if you've made it this far, you've identified with at least some of the situations that happened to him. So, I've prepared a video that you'll also enjoy. See you there.